We are going through all 받침 rules one by one, and today we're gonna study this particular consonant. Name of this consonant is 히읗, H sound consonant. Why this is so special? Let's get into it. This consonant 히읗 has four special roles as a 받침. First, 히읗 makes the following consonant aspirated. Second, 히읗 makes the following sound tensed. Third, 히읗 makes an additional N sound. And fourth, 히읗 is a mute in front of a circle consonant. Let's take a look at the first case. I just brought two syllable structures here as an example. Of course, these syllables can be other structures as long as the first one has 받침. When 히읗 is a 받침, it makes the following consonant aspirated. Then, are there special consonants that 히읗 makes aspirated? No, actually any consonants can be here, but in fact, Korean has only four aspirated consonants that are k, t, p, ch, and these are aspirated from g, d, b, z. That means when these consonants g, d, b, z are placed here, it changes its sound to k, t, p, ch. But here, we're gonna take only these three consonants because there is no case that 히읗 받침 meets bu sound consonant. Therefore, don't think too much. Just any sounds that can be aspirated becomes aspirated with 히읗. When 히읗 is followed by g becomes k, and 히읗 itself loses its own sound value. When 히읗 is followed by d becomes t, and 히읗 loses its sound value. When 히읗 is followed by z becomes t, and 히읗 loses its sound value. Here is an example. When we read it, 히읗 makes the following consonant aspirated. So second syllable becomes ko, not go anymore, and no 히읗 sound exists anymore. So we read it as 좋고, 좋고. Then what about those two? There is a 히읗 받침 followed by the sound consonant. So this the sound consonant becomes t, and 히읗 받침 disappears. So we read it as 좋다, 좋다. And the second one, same. There is a 히읗 받침 and it's followed by z sound. So 히읗 받침 makes z sound aspirated, ch sound, and itself will disappear. So we read it as 좋지, 좋지. And let's read these three. 그 sound is aspirated by 히읗, so we read it as 놓고, 놓고. And the second one, the sound is aspirated by 히읗, so we read it as 놓다, 놓다. And third one, the sound is aspirated by 히읗 받침, so we read it as 놓지, 놓지. Let's practice these two more. There is a 히읗 받침 followed by the, so it becomes t, and we read it as 쌓다, 쌓다. And the second one, there is a 히읗 받침, and it makes the following z sound aspirated, ch, so we read it as 그렇지, 그렇지. Sometimes you see a double consonant 받침. There are only two double consonants that have 히읗. One has n sound, the other has a l sound. Even though it looks a little bit more complicated, still same rule is applied. 히읗 makes the following consonant aspirated and loses its own sound value. But there is another 받침 beside 히읗. That's the one that we have to read as 받침. So we read it as 많고, 많고. What about these two? 히읗 is followed by 드, so 드 becomes 트. So we read it as 많다, 많다. He is followed by z. So z becomes ch. So we read it as 많지. 많지. Let's see how to read this double consonant. I'm gonna make letters like this. There is a heat at the bottom, so following consonant g sound becomes k. And we read a remaining bottom, so we read it as 앓고, 앓고. Then what about this one? Think about heat bottom and let's read it. 괜찮지, 괜찮지. Except those g, d, b, z consonants, there is no other consonants can be aspirated. So instead of being aspirated, one of them becomes tensed. That is a S sound consonant. Other than that, everything is the same. When 히읗 받침 meets a following S sound consonant, it becomes tensed, and 히읗 itself loses its own sound value. I believe it's easier to understand with examples. Let's make letters like this. Can you see now how heat is making the following consonant tensed? And it's losing its own sound value. So read it as 줬어, 줬어. There are two more examples to practice. First one, 탔어, 탔어. The second one, 들었어, 들었어. With the double consonant 받침, exactly same idea. If you see these letters, heat makes the following S sound tensed and lose its own sound value. So we read only a remaining 받침. So we read it as 많소, 많소. What about this? We read it as 일소, 일소. And another one? 괜찮소, 괜찮소. We studied first and second rule of 히읗 받침 today. We're gonna study rest of them on my next video. Please read it correctly. 오늘은 일이 많지요. 그렇지만 연어는 맛있어요. 좋지 않던 기억이 많지만 괜찮습니다. 댓글에 남겨주세요. Leave your answer in the comments below. Thank you. Have fun. 감사합니다. 다음 시간에 다시 만나요. 안녕.